your future by even being here this afternoon. So I'm just going to go ahead and commend you on that. I love it when I see people being proactive in what it takes to get things done and be successful. So you just get a huge kudos from me. Just so you know, my graduate assistant, Brittany, is handing out some things for you. One is a staple group of papers. It's kind of like a resource guide. It includes a lot of information I'm going to talk about, and it's also a good piece of paper for you to jot down some notes about personal statements that I might talk about today. Have it all in one place, one-stop shop. There's a checklist for admissions to graduate school, but it sounds like they might have an even better one on their jump drive. So just know you have another checklist. I'm really big about being organized, especially when you're applying to multiple schools and you have to write multiple personal statements that should be tailored, which I will get into. So you want to know, did I write that personal statement for that school? When did I send it out? When did those applications due? So by all means, that's the easiest way to get frazzled, is to not be organized. So that's in there. And then there's also a handout about our career center and the kind of services we provide. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, yes, I didn't do that.
Oh, there's one. That's, okay. Thank you. Anybody else not get a sheet? The last thing you will have gotten is a half sheet of paper that is a survey. So I have about roughly 25 to 30 minutes worth of talk time. I'm not trying to overload you this afternoon. Towards the end of my presentation, I would appreciate if you would fill that out, and we're going to come by and we're going to get those from you. Just as feedback of what you've learned and what we could potentially add if there's some more that you want to know. And also, I like to preface my presentation by saying it is just a presentation. I have slides, but that doesn't mean I have to stick to them. If you have questions, I always welcome them when you have them. Interrupt me at any time, it's okay. I'm not one of those people that's like, wait a minute, let me get to the end of my presentation and then ask questions, although you will have opportunity then as well. Introducing myself, my name is Nadira Pippin, and I'm one of the career liaisons at the Career Center. I liaise to the College of Allied Health, the College of Nursing, Brody School of Medicine, and the School of Dental Medicine. And I will say, just to be 100% honest with you, when it comes to Brody and the dental school, I work more with students that are trying to get into those programs than once they actually get in, because they handle a lot of things in-house. With Brody, they house programs such as the Masters of Public Health. I do work a lot with those students and several other like biostatistics, just some interesting majors that are coming through those programs now. But when it comes to medicine, I work a lot with them trying to get in, not so much once they actually get in. So that's a positive sign for me. If they don't feel like they need us at that particular point, or they have someone in-house, again, that works more specifically with them. We work on a liaison structure because we believe that as career counselors, we can provide you with the most detailed information if we concentrate on that one particular area. And my area is healthcare. All right? So overview of today, again, it's not much to cover because I don't want to overload you when it comes to personal statements, but I am going to talk about their purpose, how you can prepare, and how you should make them both productive and proficient. I love my little alliteration things going on. You want to make sure that you understand exactly what a personal statement is there for. A lot of people are just thinking it's that annoying necessary part of an application that I have to get through. And if that's how you approach it, then it's going to make it a difficult process for you to sit down and write one. Or it could be that opportunity to really explain in your own words why you're the person that should be in this program and what it can do for you. So someone tell me, in your words, what do you think the purpose of the personal statement is?
I would probably guess it's the graduate program's purpose to figure out who it is that you are within like a couple, I'm not sure if it's more than a sentence or a couple sentences, but it's like why going into that program is important and special to you, and what is it that you want to achieve if you get accepted.
So I heard goals in there. What do you want to achieve? That kind of gets into goals. And also learning more about that person as an individual. So again, when you're looking at an application, it's very methodical. They have things they need to know: your name, your date, what your GPA was, did you satisfy these science courses. It's, these are getting to the nitty-gritty, so to speak, of how is someone actually qualified to be in this program. So now you've limited all that down. You have all these people that are qualified, but how do you make that decision? And it starts to get into the specifics of who is this person, how can they contribute to this field. So that is, again, that personal aspect. That's why it's called a personal statement. There's that personal aspect of getting to know someone on a piece of paper. Any other ideas?
Motivations.
Motivation. I'm glad that you said that. Because if someone is deterred from applying to graduate school because they have a requirement of a personal statement, then they already know your motivation level. The effort that you put into a personal statement can reflect the effort that you may put into their program. So there's a lot they're looking at when they're looking at a personal statement. It's not just them browsing through. A lot of them actually sit down and read them, especially when it comes to selecting their top 25 to 30 candidates that are going to get into that program this year. They're going to read those. So you want to make sure they're up to par. Very good. So kind of some of the things you've already talked about. Highlighting the qualifications. It kind of went dark on me, but it will highlight your qualifications for the program. So although you talk about those qualifications in your application process, you want to make sure you still cover your qualifications in your personal statement. Because sometimes when there are multiple documents that qualify you for a program, so you have the application, your personal statement, your test scores, they're not going to always look at every single one in detail. So they all have to be able to stand alone. So your personal statement needs to somehow reflect how you're qualified to do this line of work that you're going into with this graduate program. Yes, ma'am.
If you apply to many grad schools, do you have to write completely different personal statements for each one, or can you just tweak it for different?
Tweaking is the best way.
Okay.
Now, Stephanie talked before about how each grad school is different. You will find some grad school programs that have questions laid out. We don't want necessarily, they'll call it a personal statement or a statement of interest or statement of intent. They'll give it different names. Some will say, we have these 3 questions. Answer them for us in paragraph format, or answer them number 1, 2, 3. And others will just say, write this personal statement. It must be no longer than 2 pages. So it's going to vary depending on what school you apply to, which is why it's so important to stay organized and knowing what each school is asking for and giving them that. But once you have actually written one, it's only tweaking. Once you write an effective personal statement, someone says, well, here are these 3 questions, answer them. You can pull from your personal statement and be able to answer those 3 questions quite easily, or go into more detail with them. Yes?
So when you're saying that each part needs to stand alone, on the personal statement, do you need to put, I got this score on my GRE?
Oh, it doesn't have to be that
Okay.
in tune, unless there's something you want to highlight about your GRE score that's extremely positive, and again, you want to bring that to the light. But again, you want to be general when it comes to things of that nature. Your qualifications will go into that volunteer and shadowing experience that Stephanie was talking about before. The more you're able to do that, the more you'll be able to beef up your personal statement, because you'll have all of these experiences to talk about. If you're going to find employment, part-time or full-time, while you're in school, try to make it meaningful employment. Okay, no, you can't work as a speech pathologist when you're only 20 years old and you don't have a master's degree, but could you potentially work in a speech pathology office, doing office assistant type work? Very much so. Your exposure to the field is meaningful to them to show that you're trying to seek meaningful experiences and not just anything. Yes, sir.
And so what's the same? And so wouldn't the same thing actually apply to volunteering as well?
Yes, it would. It definitely would. Your volunteer experience should be meaningful. Now, of course, you want to vary your volunteer experience just based upon your own personal interest. You don't have to only volunteer so that it's going to help get you in the graduate school or professional program. But you want to make sure that among those volunteer experiences are meaningful ones that you can talk about. Demonstrating your writing ability and your creativity. So they are looking at your writing ability on a personal statement. And I know that strikes some people as very difficult because some people don't like their writing abilities. Others are very confident about their writing abilities when they might not should be. And others just don't care. They can tell. I can tell when I'm reviewing a personal statement if someone has really put time and effort into this writing ability. Misspelled words, we're going to get into that, just simple things. Not writing how you talk or how you text. It's a really huge thing with like I said, this generation. I'm not that far removed from you guys, but the technology that's been available to most undergraduate students today, it kind of goes against the classic personal statement, which a lot of programs are still using to get into their programs. So I like to ask my question, how many spaces go in between a sentence? That is a down, no, you're right. It's thumbs up that you're right, but it's thumbs down that I hardly ever see that on personal statements anymore. So that's what I mean. I don't think a lot of people really have it in the forefront of their mind when they're typing, but it's something that I catch because I'm used to seeing them. Okay. And then outlining career goals, which you talked about, having some kind of goal in mind, knowing why you're even interested in this program. What can this program do for you? Okay. So they've already talked about researching graduate programs. Make sure you do gather information about these programs. You want to do a little bit more than what you can just find on their website. So, for example, more than just how that program, their entrance requirements, what are they doing within that program that's interesting that you can bring up or that you can align yourself with? Some programs are known for their research efforts within the field itself. So other programs may be more clinical based. So they're very hands-on, or they might be more community based. So they have a lot of community efforts just within that graduate program. Now, if you can uncover these things and relate them to what you want to do, it shows them that you've done your research and that you can be a good fit for that program. So that's what I mean about gathering information about the programs. Using ONET to explore occupations. It's going to be interesting for this poll. Has anyone ever heard of ONET before? I have a couple. Wonderful. For the purpose of exploring occupations, ONET, the website, just so you know, is onetonline.org, onetonline.org. Okay? So for the purpose of exploring occupations, it gives you an idea of what they actually do in this field. Go to ONET, in the search box, type in whatever your field that you're interested in. They're going to bring back a list of occupations. Click on the one that you're most interested in and look at the description of what people in this field actually do. And then when you're reading those descriptions of what they do, think about what you're reading that they do that you already know how to do. Because everything that you learn in a graduate program isn't solely learned in the graduate program. A lot of those things are learned beforehand, especially if you have those meaningful opportunities to shadow and volunteer and work in these areas. You might already see some things that you know how to do, and it would be really interesting for you to put those things onto your personal statement and be able to talk about them in your interviews. Okay. Your professional associations, which is another thing Stephanie already talked about. So again, researching those programs, there might be articles about them. So Google the program itself and find out what they're in the news for. And again, be able to relate that information if you find something worth relating. And she talked about the mission and the values and relating yourself to that as well. Creating an outline. This is not something that everyone wants to do. So I know, again, writing styles differ. I'm a little bit more organized. My outline isn't officially A, then subset, then I don't do that kind of outline, but I do have outline of the thoughts that I want to do. It's more of a brainstorming session, which I believe is up here as well. But if they have specific instructions of what they want you to do, follow those instructions, number one. If they're more vague and just submit a personal statement regarding your interest in the program, now you know you need to do a little bit more brainstorming and organize your thoughts a bit more. I will say that it's, again, another interesting thing when I'm reviewing personal statements is that I can jump with your thoughts. I do it in an interview, I do it in a personal statement, I can't help it. Is when I'm reading a paragraph and it's like, okay, I'm into this thought, and then the next paragraph jumps completely left field, and then the next paragraph jumps back to the original thought, and I'm like, okay, this is when I can start seeing I'm jumping with you. It's not that organization of thought of how is this going to make sense, how is it going to flow in the end. So you do want to give that thought, but when you're initially just creating your outline, you can do things like that. Jot it down as it comes. Brainstorm everything you've done and put it down there. Don't worry about the format just yet. Then go back and try to format it. And once you've done all you feel you can, then come to the Career Center or the Writing Center and seek help. Or people that you know. You might know someone that's already gone to graduate school. You might know a grad school professor. Get them to review it if they're able to. Everyone is going to have an opinion. There is no one set way that you absolutely, positively have to do a graduate school statement. Let me let you know that. It's called a personal statement because it's yours. No one can write it for you. So if someone says, take that out because I don't like it, and you in your heart of hearts say, I really love this and I want to keep it, this is me, this is who I am, then it's not our business to tell you to take it out completely. Now, if I see something that doesn't make much sense, I will let you know. I'll let you know why I think so. But again, ultimately, it's up to you. Okay? So treat everyone's opinion as such. Again, decide on your approach. And there are several approaches you can take, but I like, there's no official name for it. I call it the past, present, future model. So this is what I have done, this is what I'm currently doing, and this is what I look to do. And I'll keep each of those steps relatable to where this program can help you get to that end goal of what you're trying to do. So that's a really simple way to think about a graduate school statement. Now there are some more creative approaches. I've seen, I'm not going to get it right, but I've read some personal statements that they compare their whole life process to something else really interesting or funky. And this, again, this gets tricky because some people have those creative writing skills and they want to bring that to the table, but when the person reading it they can't get the gist of whether or not this person is actually qualified for the program, or are they just feeding me a line comparing their life to a bag of M&Ms. And you're trying to follow, okay, every paragraph talks about an M&M, and you're like, okay, what part of their life are we dealing with right now? It's very creative, but I'm going to say, now tell me how this how is this making sense right now? And if you get that feedback from multiple people, it might be worth listening to. Yes, sir.
Should you try to use humor in it or not? Because I've heard that kind of like you should try to keep it in a professional.
Humor is subjective. It's opinionated. So what you find funny might be offensive to someone else. So in a setting such as a personal statement, humor is going to be really difficult to come across. You know, someone could be putting humor on a very personal spin. Maybe something happened when they were younger, but the way they wrote it in their personal statement was supposed to be humorous, but that other person, again, they could find it offensive, or they just could not see the humor and therefore read it the wrong way. So again, if it's something that's very subjective like that, I'm going to make the recommendation to stay clear of it. Now, there are others who can handle that situation. They know how to make it come across. They have those writing skills. Okay. And then there are others that are stepping outside of their comfort zone a little bit too far. It's okay to step outside of your comfort zone, because that's how you're going to push yourself to learn and to grow. But when you step too far, it gets awkward, and everyone can tell when it gets awkward. And humor is best related in person. So if you want to be humorous, I say save it for the interview. So you don't have to lose yourself. Just save it for when it's appropriate. Okay? And again, aligning that personal statement with the grad school programs and needs. Stephanie also talked about how ECU is really big on having graduates that want to serve Eastern North Carolina, or at least serve North Carolina. So if you're applying for a program with those kind of specific values in their mission statement, you want to make sure that you can help align that. Maybe you're from a rural area and you're planning on returning home so that you can provide this service to somewhere within your home area. That makes perfect sense if that's your actual plan. If your plan is to say, hey, as soon as I graduate, I'm jetting out to Washington, D.C., I would just say, don't tell that to the program that wants people to stay in North Carolina. Because if you put it there, it's going to be a part of their decision process. But if you're applying to that program in D.C., you don't want to tell the program in D.C. that you're from a homegrown rural area. You want to make sure, again, you're talking in the language of which program you're applying to, and you're making it make sense. And it's not a difficult task. It might sound daunting because I'm talking about it up here today. It's really not that difficult to do those little tweaks to make sure that you're covering what that program needs. Developing your content. Again, we talked about a lot of these things. We're going to cover your qualifications, your knowledge of the profession itself. And again, the more meaningful experiences you gain in your undergraduate career, the more information you'll have to talk about your knowledge of the profession and your qualifications on that personal statement. Now, someone may be thinking it but not willing to ask, well, what if I'm right at the point of applying and I haven't done a lot of those things? What can I do now? You can still have an effective personal statement. It helps to have these experiences. If they're a requirement of the program, then you're dealing with that. You're not meeting their minimum requirements. But if it's not a requirement of their program that you even have basic shadowing and volunteering hours, you can still talk about how you're qualified or your passion for the field. That's another approach. Some people talk about their aha moment or their defining moment of when they found out that this was going to be their profession. And some aha moments happen at 5 years old, and some might have happened 5 months ago. But when did that moment happen, and what was the process that it came across? And you can make that one of your approaches, as long as you're including some of these content areas when you're talking about that aha moment. That's the whole point. Explaining special circumstances. This is one bullet I do want to talk about because I've had a lot of students ask me, how do I explain that my GPA is low? Or how do I explain that I didn't get a high score on this entrance exam, but I still want to apply because I've heard that they still accept people with a certain range, et cetera, et cetera. Explaining circumstances, it is an important feature if you really feel the need to do so, but more than harping on what you don't have in a personal statement or even an interview, you really need to talk about what you do have. So the personal statement is not the time to go through and either complain or make excuses. And even as positive as some excuses may seem, they're still excuses. And when someone is really, again, you're looking at applying for a program that 200 people may apply for, they only have 20 slots. They're going to judge what they see in that personal statement, and you have to be willing to accept that. Like, I read this, oh, we already knew she had a low GPA, why does she have these excuses? You know, so more than why your GPA or why you took a chemistry class and the grade in that one particular class wasn't as high as you would like it to be, what did you learn from that? Maybe while you were taking that chemistry class, you were also extending your volunteer and shadowing hours. You were working full-time. You were in an organization, and you were heavily a member of that organization. There were a lot of things going on, and you realized you can't have your hand in every pot in order to be effective. So you learn time management skills. You learn how to prioritize. What did you gain from that experience? And talk about how it's no longer a factor versus, you know, this is everything that happened that caused it to happen. You know, that's, if you want to explain a special circumstance, that's what you should focus on. Okay. And discussing what you hope you can contribute to the program is another lack that I see in a lot of personal statements. They want someone in a program, because they're intimate programs. If you're looking at 25 to 30 even students, it's small, well, it's a little bit larger than the number of people that are in this classroom alone. So this is a very intimate program. You'll get to know each other. They want to know, how can you contribute to what we have? That's why they want to know your goals. If you have research ideas, they might not be something that they're currently researching, but you know in your graduate studies, you would love to research this particular idea revolving around using this tool in speech pathology. Or you've heard about it and you want to gain more knowledge about that so you can bring that knowledge to the program. You see where you're making a contribution to something that they have not had before, and therefore you would look attractive to them. So that's in talking about goals. That goes into that future part. What am I looking to do part. Okay. Some tips and considerations. I don't know what's coming in late. You want to be specific, so you don't want to, again, go off on the deep end and be too vague. Why do you want to be in this program, and why do you want to have this career? That's where everything you describe should focus around. Don't write like you speak or like you text. So if you find yourself doing that, you can check your own document. So go back and check yourself and then have others double check behind you. Using big words. This is not something I've talked about yet. It's another one of my lovely, since I've started reviewing personal statements intimately, I love big words. I have since elementary school when I was the spelling bee champion. I love them. So when I see a big word that I don't know, I'm gonna look it up. I don't know every word in the English vocabulary and some words in the Latin vocabulary that they'll throw into personal statement. I don't know. So I'll look it up. And sometimes people don't know that I know words like that. I'm just one of those, I like that kind of thing. I've seen words that were used inappropriately, and it does not paint the person in a good light. So again, like, you're using the words, but you don't even know how you're using the words. There are several times I've read personal statements, and I'll read it, And I'll read the sentence again, and I'll read it again, and I'll cock my head to the side. I just don't think that's how they meant to use that word. Just, it might be the right word, but the wrong way of using it. So then I'll look it up, and sure enough, it's not. And when we talk about it, they'll try to defend it. In the end, I mean, it's Webster's dictionary. I can pull the book, we can go online, doesn't matter. If it's wrong, it's wrong. So that's just my little story around big words. What is my advice around big words? Sometimes simple is best. When you're getting your thought across, you don't have to use the biggest words that are out there to do so. Just keep it simple. And if you do use them, make sure you're using them the right way. So check behind your own self. All right? Consider the flow of your document. It's not nice to jump back and forth, especially from someone that's reading these, and if you think, put yourself in the shoes of the people that are actually reviewing these documents. Because I think that's a mistake that a lot of students don't make. Whether it is for graduate school or for a job opportunity, it doesn't matter. Put yourself in the shoes of people that are reviewing them. They have hundreds that they have to review. So we look from a very personal standpoint, but we're forgetting that someone that's looking at this might have looked at 20 others just in the past hour alone. So you want to have something that makes sense, and not something that makes them like, oh, not another one that's talking about their life as an M&M. You want it to make sense to them. So think about that when your finished product. If you're reading it, read it as if you wanted to admit yourself. And on the flip side, let me talk about another thing that I talk about with students is the whole idea of bragging about themselves, and I don't like to really brag about myself. And I understand we're taught to be humble in our society. We're taught not to brag. And it's not bragging. What you're doing is you're saying in your own words how you're qualified. And if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. They're not going to know that you volunteered with Autistic Society and you babysat for 2 summers for a family that had 2 twin autistic boys. They don't know that. Now, like someone has told me, I don't want to tell them about that because they may think that I'm just bragging about everything that I've done. Well, I mean, if you don't tell them, that could have been the thing that made the difference between your experience and somebody else's experience. So you're just giving them a well-rounded view of who you are and what you've done. You're not saying I'm the absolute best 100% babysitter ever. Now that sounds like they're bragging. But just saying I babysat, it's just giving them details. Okay? Avoid the overuse of I. Again, when you're doing your first draft, I understand. You're just writing down your thoughts. Now go back and read through that. If every sentence in your paragraph begins with I, it's time to revamp some sentences. Yes, ma'am.
I was talking to my dad about this a couple of weeks ago because I was doing some interviews, and he was talking about using we as in like, we are in the profession to do this, this, and this. So
It gets tricky.
what's your take on using we?
Well, I'll give you a couple of things that I see with we. One is a personal statement. So using we is applying somebody else is involved. And I automatically go to, is it a multiple personality thing? Are they referring to themselves as we? Or are they referring to we in the program? Again, that's going to be up to the interpretation of whomever is reading it. It's still a personal statement. So using we, maybe if you were talking in the final parts of the personal statement, when you're talking about how that program can be helpful and how you can contribute, I can see how that could make a little bit of sense there when you're putting yourself in the shoes of someone in the program. But you can't put yourself in the shoes of someone in the profession because you're not. So that's kind of how I view that. And reading it depends on how I'm reading it. What context is it actually being used? But if we is used just as much as I, it's still going to be an issue. So sentences don't have to begin with I in order to be effective. And it's so simple to change them around. You just, if you reword the sentence so that it doesn't begin with I, you don't lose the context of the sentence. Easiest way. Okay. And lastly, be original but not too cheesy or cliche. So it's okay to be original. And I do appreciate originality, but when it gets to the point of being cheesy, now we're looking at, and will it make the final difference? We will never know. You will never know. That's why when it comes to things like a personal statement, a resume, a cover letter, it doesn't matter. I want to know how you feel when it leaves your hands. Do you feel you have the best document possible? Are you confident that this represents you on a piece of paper? If you can be represented on a piece of paper. And if when that leaves your hands, you're saying this is me, and if they don't like me as I am, then this is just not the right program for me, then you're in the right vicinity. And if it leaves out and all you're thinking about is everything you should have added or could have done or that, then you know you still have room for improvement. Okay? Any questions for me? You guys had some good questions during, so I wasn't shocked. So you know, on the handout is there as well. If you would like for someone to review a personal statement, and again, it doesn't have to be when you start applying. If you're getting an early start and you want to do a good draft, you can be futuristic with a personal statement. What kind of activities do you want to show that you have? That shows you what you can be doing over the next couple of years to fulfill that. Or if you just want to draft something up now and have someone look over your writing style and your ideas, we can still do that at the Career Center. But we do want to have something specific in mind. It needs to be concrete, so you need to come with something in hand. All right, and 328-6050 is the number you would call for an appointment. Yes, sir.
How long does it take if I call for an appointment? Would it be like in the next couple of weeks, or is it the next day, or how does that work?
It works on the availability of the counselor, which if you're telling them, it depends on what your current major is. A lot of times they'll go by your current major. If your current major is chemistry, then you might get the liaison that's in the College of Arts and Sciences. But if you're telling them that, well, but I'm applying for a program that's in allied health or nursing or medical school or whatnot, then they'll let you know it's me. Or you can request me specifically. And again, it just depends on my calendar. Like right now, I know I have no more availability this week. And certain times of the semester, I can book out 3 weeks in advance. So if it's something you think you want to do before May, then just go ahead and schedule the appointment for the end of April. You don't have to wait until the last minute to schedule the appointment. It can be several weeks out if that works for you. And I think it's nice. Give yourself a deadline. Hey, I'm going to schedule this appointment in 2 weeks, so I know in 2 weeks I need to have this written and done. Yes.
Is it still open during the summer?
Yes, we do not know. ECU does not shut down operation in the summertime. And for spring break, on Christmas break, I think is the only time they actually shut off any computers at East Carolina University. So, yeah, we're open all summer long, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. All right. Good job.